sign up on the Korean server. It's always been the smaller server, even, I would say even back when Brood War transferred over, Kespa, yeah, Kespa teams, that's what I wanted to say. Kespa teams transferred over. I would say even then the IEM qualifiers were smaller than the European ones, but definitely not by like a large amount. And over the last 6, 7, 8 years? Oh my god, I think it's been 8 years actually since all the Brood War teams swapped to Starcraft 2. Anyways, over the last 8 years, it's gotten smaller and smaller, whereas Europe has pretty much stayed the same after like 2014. Anyways, enough history. In the top right of Oxide, we have the one and only Blue Terran, Byun. The bottom left is the Red Terran for Kaisi Gaming this time. You think Byun will have to bow out of his tournament after his injury Wednesday morning at GSL? I mean, it's not like, I mean, as far as I know, but he has wrist problems. This is he didn't fall on his wrist and snap it during the game. He had the same problem he had in GSL a couple of weeks ago when he faced Maru, and he had to pause and they had to give him a warning. Like, he just has wrist problems. I don't think Byun is going to bow out of anything, because if he was going to bow out of anything, he would have already done it. He would have already decided not to play in these qualifiers. The problem with Byun is that he's actually quite stubbornly hardworking. He does too much, and he is not giving enough time for his wrist to take a break. So that does mean he's very good at Starcraft, and he's very good very quickly after coming back from the military, but it also means that his future is quite uncertain. But for right now, he's just going to push through the pain as much as he can, which means playing a TSL. Giving the fans as many video games with him included as possible. But, man, I hope he doesn't bust his wrist, man. Anyways. I'm going to have to get like a Byun wrist jar or something, where every time we talk about Byun's wrists, we put a quarter in the jar. Byun going for a gas second here is going to go for a factory expand, whereas Time is going to go for 1 Rax expand. Getting a bunker, despite having the ramp to use, is a very safe play. Byun is adding on more Reapers and more Hellions. He's going to be trying to race up that ramp, but with the bunker being available for Time, it's really difficult to get some damage done. Maybe you get into the natural, but then the natural is not exactly going to have a ton of SCVs to kill anyways. So I don't see this doing a lot of damage for Byun. This needs to be more of a thing that tries to catch someone being extremely greedy. In this case, Time was about as greedy as you could be as far as the build order, but then has done the proper things to make sure it's not totally defenseless. He's gotten a bunker, is basically what it is. And now a Hellion is on the way, because I guess that would be the ultimate greed, is like no bunker and immediately adding a tech lab to the factory. That would be the insanely greedy thing to do. There is only 1 Marine in that bunker, to be fair. Time a little suspicious of the Reapers trying to get into that high ground via the Reaper cliff, and he wouldn't be... He's not wrong for guessing that, but that does mean that his natural is more wide open. So he loses the mule. Time loses a mule. And then that is literally it so far as he saves the CDs in the bunker. He's going to stop mining from his natural for a little. And that's... I mean, you just have to give that up, right? There's not much you can do about it. But eventually, Time will have this tank pop out. He's actually playing a little bit greedy by going for a tank and not a Cyclone. But the tank will eventually pop out. The Viking can even land and help out here. And he can get back to mining and building SCVs. A little bit supply blocked is more of a problem. Bodybuild is finishing up. SCVs used to try and body block to kill every last unit. Instead, losing their lives. 3 of them go down. Maybe they should have just stayed out of it. And Byun going to continue the aggression with a medevac. Bring in his tank over. Sometimes very odd to do this. This is a situation where there is one really important unit, and that one really important unit can be concaved on to really reduce its effectiveness. That's what tanks have. That's their weakness. So when it comes to these types of really early pushes, I mean, either the defending player kind of whiffs the engagement, they mess up, and they're like, oh god, no, not the snowball effect. Or it's more of a micro game, which Byun's very good with this micro. He could try and drop, you know, lifting the tank, but if you're gonna do that, when I've gotten a cyclone, when I've done anything else except get the tank is definitely more of a pressure point, it's more of a push, it's more of a siege up and contain. But one tank, it's kind of it's like some guy is supposed to have 5 other guys help him lift a steel beam, and then he goes and he tries to do it himself. And like the 4 other guys look at him and they're like, what are you doing? That's what one tank sieged up looks like in TvT. It's not quite a perfect analogy because that one guy is actually, I guess, to make it a perfect analogy, that one guy actually is incredibly strong. He's actually like this super buff guy and he's kind of intimidating usually. But does he hold against the eventual busting power of time? No. No, eventually he's gonna need guys to help him lift the steel beam. Eventually, Byun's gonna need more units to actually protect this tank. In this case, nothing really even happened. Byun perhaps hoping that time would try and bust out, get a face full of tank fire, and then back away. Didn't find any success, and then has to respect the idea of TvT, where not only do they eventually get enough to break out, right? The reinforcement lines, you don't have a warp gate, and warp prism just means that reinforcing means that your army gets weaker and theirs get a little bit stronger, but you also have to worry about harassment and drops in TvT, so you don't ever see like rally pushing in TvT, and you always see these contains usually eventually broken. Couple more SCVs go down. Byun is going to re-engage on the left side as time sits down his 3rd CC. Byun is finishing up his own orbital, which he'll also set down as he does this engagement. Time has situated his tanks fairly nicely. I mean, Byun didn't go for many Ravens, just the single one. I mean, they did over time, but I'm more so thinking about the amount of interference matrices he has. A lot of the time, we see both interference matrix and auto turrets, and they can bust quite a few tanks. In this situation, maybe 1 interference matrix just to stop this tank from firing. He's a little bit late to it. Oh, barely gets that in time before the second shot goes off. Viking comes back for time, barely doesn't die. It does want to patrol, it does want to help, but it is going to die, it looks like. The Raven was much more important for time to pay attention to. I mean, the interference matrix on the medevac is an interesting choice, but I think I understand it. That was a very confident choice of time to not try to throw it on either more auto turrets or interference matrix the tank for the medevac. He thought he was going to clean that up. He was definitely right about it. The amount of Marines he had just grew too large with all of his advanced production. And then he was like, well, why not just take out the medevac as well? 100%. Don't let anything leave. Don't let anything hop into that main base. I really like the decision. Very high-level decision. Sensor tower, that's a goner. That was a little bold by Byun. Byun does not have as many units. He does not have 1-1, and he does not have combat shields. Time has reaped the rewards of defensive macro play. He got his 3rd base on location as fast as he would want. He didn't really lose as many SCVs as Byun would have wanted him to. And he got away with a faster 3rd CC and such faster production, and is now inside of Byun's base. But Byun does have some Marines in the natural of time, so it's a little bit more of a base trade than I gave it credit for. This command center of time is going down. I'm not sure that time is paying attention. He's married a tank in here somehow. What the fuck? When did that happen? Or maybe that was intentionally dropped. I'm not sure, but it didn't work out. The tank of time on the low ground is only helping a minimal amount. He's going to target down the main base command center, at least a little bit of tit for tat. No, he actually saved the natural. Nope, he did lose it. So it has been a tit for tat. He's got to kill at least one of the orbitals. He might have to be able to kill. He might have to kill 2. Byun is on top of the 3rd orbital, killing the SCVs. Maybe going to be able to grab the orbital. Doesn't look like it. The tank just a little bit too good of a defensive unit. And Byun is the one who has taken a bit more damage? Question mark? Well, I mean, the workers lost tab makes it look like he took more damage, but actually the worker count is very similar. Byun lost his main. Time lost his natural. Byun is mining off of 2 bases. Time is mining off of more like 1.5 bases, because his 3rd has been forced to lift up. Byun goes into the main base and now conquers his opponent's main base at the same time that his opponent is trying to conquer his, but that is so many more units for Byun. Time might not be able to take this engagement, or maybe he will. Actually, a lot of medevacs healing might have been the difference maker there of why he won the Marine fight. No, actually, no, there's no combat shields. Yeah, there's no combat shields. Had to restart. That's why they won. Of course, of course. Byun never got the combat shields. His Marines are a bit doo-doo. But all they really need to do is cover the Liberator, cover the tank, and hold on until Combat Shields is done. But once again, it has been denied. Byun is dropping in the main base again after trying to get into the natural, but doesn't find much success, as now there are tanks of time trying to defend these naturals. These mineral lines, and this game is just absolutely topsy-turvy. It's surprisingly even on the overall supply, but time has certainly dipped down lower in the worker count, a bit higher in the army, as he manages to push away Byun's double drop, reduces it to a single drop, and time also finally evacuates out of Byun's side of the map. But what is this game? Time also retained, I think, more production than his opponent. Maybe a little bit. Time on 4 barracks and 1 factory, whereas Byun is on 5 barracks. I think his factory only just finished. I think it was producing. So actually still pretty even on the production, even on the upgrades. The biggest difference maker is the fact that Combat Shields is still not done for Byun. Absolutely huge. Time does have his natural replace, and this is his 3rd that he saved, so eventually that can go back on the low ground. But look at this, a bold move here from our Red Terror, and he barely doesn't lose that medevac. He's gonna drop on top of the tank, drop on top of that ramp, and siege up. That is 3 tanks all sieged up, controlling the ramp, and he's gonna go ahead and dive on top of the Liberator. Byun didn't have any tanks protecting his low ground, which he didn't expect. He thought Time was just gonna chill in the main base, and he still can't take Marine fights for the life of him because Combat Shield still isn't done. The only reason it went okay is that Byun's tanks finally did siege up, and now Byun jumps on top of Time's tanks, but it won't be enough to actually kill them. 3 of them still alive. A single Viking of Byun shooting down Time's medevacs, desperately trying to help out, is also going to go down if he's not careful, but Byun does make with that back. Combat Shields, oh, Combat Shields again, are you kidding me? Oh my god, Combat Shields is denied for the 3rd time this game. What? Byun needs his Marines, man. That's where he's so good. He needs his Marines to actually have the goddamn upgrade. 2-2 is also about 90% done for Byun. I mean, he's missing 10 health, though. That is so important. Oh my god, and he goes up the ramp, and Time's tank just does wonders right there. He reduces the Marine count. He takes out the tank, and Byun, I don't think he wins this game. He can't. He lost too much army. He's lost too much economy. He scans and sees that Time is healthily mining and taps out. GG. Oh my goodness. Dude, Combat Shields would have been such a difference maker. There were so many fights where the Marine count was perfectly fine, even maybe, or maybe a bit favorable for Byun sometimes, but Combat Shields is just so huge. Maybe if he had 2-2 the entire time over 1-1, then we're like doing math with Combat Shields and shit, but when it comes to Combat Shields, the most important math is their dynamic against the tanks. We can do a lot of math, and someone's gonna go into the unit tester and, like, you know, have 20 Marines with 2-2 against 1-1, but no Combat Shields, and tell me how that goes. But what's most important in TvTs is oftentimes those tank counts, especially when it comes to the base races. And tanks, they don't care about that 2 armor. They care about the Combat Shields. To be fair, I do think Byun was in a worse position for a lot of that game. Maybe Wardy has to go cast something else? That's weird. All right, well, we're getting to game 2. Pillars of gold for game 2. In the bottom left, down 1, he is Byun. In the top right, we have Time. Time getting a lead with the build orders that game, I would say. Not taking damage from Byun's aggressive opener. Or enough damage. And then the only time it was really worrying was when, you know, did Byun's push on that third actually get into a good spot, and it didn't. It didn't get into a good enough spot. Time had too many Marines from earlier barracks production and, you know, faster reinforcements, because again, the way that, you know, you have to move across the map as a Terran player to reinforce. The Defender's advantage really does kick in. That Byun overstayed his welcome, could not escape with anything, and I do, again, have to applaud Time's decision to go for the medevac interference matrix as opposed to going for the tanks or going for the auto turret, because, as we saw for the rest of the game, Byun's 2 medevacs are the reason that he almost clawed his way back in. And not many people can do that. So if Byun had been able to save 1 medevac full of 8 Marines to hop into the main base, he might have canceled or stalled out the extra 2 barracks. He might have kept Time focused on that so he doesn't do his drop into the main as quickly or attack Byun's third as quickly as what first happened, right? I mean, I wouldn't usually give so much credit to a single drop. You know, I'd mention as a hypothetical, but then be like, yeah, you know, who knows? But when it's Byun, I would give a lot of credit to denying his opportunity to drop, especially since Time didn't exactly have a lot of anti-drop measures. So, perhaps it all really started there. But that might be a little too extreme to say. Byun has once again opened up with a factory expand. Time going for a normal 1-Rax expand. Also being a bit of a greedy boy in terms of not scouting his opponents with a 1-Rax expand. Byun, known for his Reapers, definitely can cheese in TvT. Time is taking a risk, but without sending the SCV out, he now has a slightly more mining. Just a little bit. Thank you, Milkman, for the 100 bits. Byun's Reaper shows up to an SCV that is no longer protected, as Time's Reaper was maybe guessing that Byun's Reaper would be to the right side. It was actually to the left. But Byun needs to get the heck out of there. His Reaper had to leave, but while Time was shooting it, so took a lot of damage. Time has to now respect the idea of his opponent going for a factory expand, though, which also would mean he has more Reapers than Time, as Time did not go for the second Reaper opener. He's being one of the greediest openers you can do, except that he built a bunker with it. So there's a couple of different things that can change. You can go Reaper, Reaper, which does help. You can go into... I lost my train of thought. You can go into Reaper, Reaper, which then it would be 2 Reapers to 2 with very little time for the guy with the second Reaper, faster than you to actually utilize it. And then you can also... I don't know, I'm trying to think of... I'm completely brain dead right now. There was a second part to this, and I've completely forgotten it. Yeah, I can't even remember, but it doesn't matter as much. I'll get around to it later on. The Hellions coming in with the Reapers, once again, a little scary. This time around, Time pulls to the main base as opposed to pulling to the bunker. And this time, doesn't lose any SCVs. One SCV gets awfully low. Thank you, Tiberian, for the 100 bits. Can't believe how much I brain farted there. I was gonna, I guess to finalize the thought overall is that instead of getting a second Reaper, he immediately went into the reactor, which can be a little bit greedy, but he did do fine with it. And the bunker is going to help protect the natural as the game goes on. I guess the other thing you can do is what Time did, which is that he swapped over his factory immediately into the reactor. So it's not this kind of like awkward, like, well, Marines are coming out at a consistent point, but Marines aren't that great against the microability of Reaper Hellion. So I have those plus 1 Hellion at a time, like hopefully I can defend. Instead, swapping off to the factory, reactoring out the Hellions does give you a lot of power in the early game. It kind of is like that power swings from the Reaper Hellion guy with the factory expand over to the guy who did the factory reactors with Hellion, and then eventually goes back to maybe the guy who went to a faster tech lab with tanks, because these Hellions aren't exactly going to be helpful the longer the game goes. But they are helpful right here, right now, as Byun once again goes for, not a medevac this time, but a Banshee. But the point is, aggressive in two different fronts. The Hellions could try and help out to the left side. They definitely don't help against the Banshee, though. They would have been so much more helpful against a drop. The Cyclone's going to react pretty quickly with the Raven, though, and the Banshee kind of hoping to get 5 or 6 SCV kills, I think is really all you would expect in a TvT, unless your opponent skipped the Cyclone. And the Hellions, well, they just chilled because Byun didn't even bother trying to go up that natural ramp to do any damage. But again, what I was pointing out is that the Hellions are now awkwardly useless. At least Byun's Reapers could maybe hop in to a main base when time's not looking. Times Hellions probably don't slip into the natural of Byun, although that is possible. But Byun is building a wall specifically because he saw Factory. A factory with a reactor on it. They actually slipped by this army, just around them, and they're headed right towards the natural, but Byun's army is still at home. So how much can they really do? Scan from time in the main base of Byun. Seeing the third CC timing, seeing the additional barracks, seeing if the factory, sorry, the starport is already on the reactor is also nice to know. If it's already on the reactor, it's definitely going into Vikings. If it's building a reactor, it might be trying to swap off for the barracks. Time has now surrounded the units of Byun, and while those Reapers and Hellions might not have been the biggest loss ever, the loss of the Cyclones is really big for Byun. He needed to have those help out in the defense. A great start for Time, as now he has every single unit together. You know, 6 Hellions are like, you know, what can they do? Well, they just surrounded Byun's units. They were actually extremely helpful. And now they're going to be here to maybe soak up a single shot from the tank, if they even have to. There, they soak it up. The auto turrets come down for both sides. Byun's a little bit later, a little bit more awkward, too, as that one Raven was looking for a place to put the auto turret down and couldn't find any. It's such an awkward unit sometimes when it comes to spellcasting, but I do believe that Time might just have the power to push through. Byun not going to be able to qualify for TSL6. And that is just too unfortunate. Fantastic news for Time. And there's a lot of Byun's fans out here. Byun is going to hold on to the very last, clean up the tanks with the SCVs helping out. It's not quite game over, but that was a lot of damage for Byun to take. He's now down 6 workers, but Time's third CC is already on location. His sim is already done. Combat shields are on the way. It's not game over, actually. That SCV pool with the Viking landing was just barely enough to clean that up. That looked like it was going to be so much worse. But yeah, Byun is down in the workers, down in economy in general. The one thing he has going for him that's actually quite good, it is very good, is 1-1. Byun really needs to keep this dream of qualifying alive so he can keep the dream of really doing quite well in TSL alive, so he can keep the dream of going to Katowice alive. It all starts here, man. That's a lot of pressure. Some people doing the math in chat. Seems like he does literally need to qualify, as the guy he would beat in EPT points is already qualified. Ragnarok qualifying to the first qualifier. Byun has tried in every single one and has fallen just short. I mean, yesterday he faced Stats, I think, which is just an unlucky draw. I don't know who he faced in the first one. But Time would be, I guess you would consider him one of the easier opponents in some situations. I mean, I think people would see like Dark and be like, oh, thank God Byun dodged Dark, right? But then on the other hand, Byun's TVZ is so good, like you'd want him to face the Zerg players. Although, well, no spoilers for Super Tournament. Anyways, the TvT actually is a bit more questionable. Time doesn't have as much name recognition as Byun, or as much hype as Byun recently. But Time's TvT is quite solid. Although this is a very good find for Byun. Getting that medevac down, easy peasy. I mean, Time did find a Viking off to the right side to stop harassment, but wasn't quite the same trade as letting all those Marines die in the medevac. Time still with the worker lead is now put it into a 4th command center. That could be potentially canceled, though. That's kind of a dangerous spot. Time's 1-1 also still isn't quite done. He's actually losing control of his natural ramp, and maybe Byun is fine. The perfect opening. 2 tanks, only one of them siege for that, are now going to be enough to stop the Marines from entering into the natural base, and Time is going to pull the SCVs and realizes, well, that's not going to work out. Time severely miscalculating how to handle this push. The tables have truly turned, and I think Byun is going to take game 2. Time finally rallies some Marines forward, but so much of his army supply are in Vikings that don't really help out in this specific situation. He's going to lose his natural orbital, which he can actually do, I suppose, with his 4th base finishing up. But Byun also still has not started his upgrades. And his 1-1 finish, but 2-2 is now also getting far away from him. Byun has lost a lot of his medevacs to the Viking presence of Time. So he needs to be careful about how he takes these engagements, but Time really needed to, he needed to have a lot more units on the front lines and tracking the army with his tanks as well. Instead, he had the tanks kind of all over the place so that there were a couple of vulnerable spots for all of Byun's army. Time's going to try and break out. There's only a handful of tanks in the low grounds, but it's still going to be enough. Byun using Time's choke point against him now enters that 3rd base. The 4th base is floating back to the natural. Both tanks get taken out with nothing to protect them. Both Liberators get taken out. And the Vikings landing would be great against tanks or not great against Marines. And Byun is going to take us to a game 3. Woo-wee. Things are getting so dramatic. People are like, calm down, ZombieGrub. Told you Byun's fine. Byun was fine, but it really should have been a lot scarier. If you guys hear a stampede in the background, it's my cats chasing each other. And now they're like Lion King fighting each other where they're both up on their haunches and like batting each other while they're up in the air. It's like the end scene of Scar versus Simba. It's pretty big enough dramatic. Byun is not going to go down without a fight. In the top left, he has brought it to game 3. His hope of qualifying for TSL6 is still very much alive. It's Byun. In the bottom right of Death Aura, he is the Red Terran Time, and his TvT is formidable. The situation of last game wasn't as good as I painted it when Marines and tanks are trying to run into the natural and the SCVs are pulled. Not usually good. Probably like, what, 70% of the time, that's actually kind of it? Maybe only 60% of the time, that's kind of it. Alright? But it's usually a very dramatic response, one that requires, you know, not just defending right then and there, but then usually making comebacks as the game goes on, but at least it gives you the opportunity for comebacks, right? To have an SCV pool actually be the perfect ingredient to defend just as much as you need to without taking such a dramatic economy loss that it turns things even, that happens, what, 1 every 50 times you pull the SCVs? I don't know, I'm being dramatic now too. But anyways, it was the perfect situation. Byun was able to hold, and then he had upgrades going for him, which certainly helped out, but more so than upgrades helping him out, he had positioning. Time had done kind of even a rookie move, actually, which, to say it's rookie is really not being nice enough at the time, but the idea is that when it comes to tanks, and I kind of made fun of it in the first game, you know, that lone tank of Byun trying to do all the work of 4 or 5 tanks, is that alone, they're not that great. Covered by enough of their own kind, okay, they're great. But if it's 1, maybe 2, the amount of Marines being able to fan themselves out is going to be much better. And Byun was able to find only 2 tanks unprotected, I guess times Marines were like busy, and his Vikings weren't tracking the army like maybe they should have been. So really just positioning, classic TvT mistake. But anyways, Byun going for a proxy single barracks, was setting up for a Marauder opener. Little bit of a cheese, little bit of just like an aggressive opener to give himself a lead. Probably won't end in any type of victory or defeat. Especially since time, has gone for not just an SEV scout, but also was already going for a factory expand. So he's pretty well set up to deal with any type of early game shenanigans. Oh, that is so awkwardly timed. He saw the lacking barracks. What a... Oh, you know what I think it was? Did he really? Huh, okay. He must have thought this was a 2-Rax. With a 2-Rax, you're kind of expecting the Reapers, to jump into the main base, right? So you can kind of sneak the command center in. Plus, the command center is usually healthy enough that a couple of Reapers aren't going to kill it, you know? If they do try and do that. But in that case, it just awkwardly was placed right as the Marauders came in. So 100 minerals lost for that mistake. And then an extra 200 minerals lost as the supply depots are just kind of the sacrifice here for defending. Can't really do very much about it this time, not until the Cyclone's out. Byun realizing the extent of the damage he could do with this opener, only got 2 Marauders and then picked up the barracks and went for the high ground vision. And his own command center back at home producing about the same time that Time does, because Time had to cancel his. Thank you very much, Ison83 for the 22-month resub. And the Cat Stampede. Day is starting amazing already. Yeah. Still chasing after each other. Barracks eventually get pushed back. I would absolutely expect Byun to play to bio. Not a whole lot of mech TvT happening on the Korean server. Occasionally, but I feel like it's not from Byun. Actually, I feel like Time has done it recently. I feel like he might have. Anyways. Command Center number 3 already on the way for Byun, as TvT does usually get into 3 command centers. Time is actually the one falling a little bit behind on that. He is clearly going for a 3rd command center. I'd be shocked if he adds on 2 more barracks. There he goes. But Byun gets his natural on location faster. He gets his 3rd CC a good minute faster than Time as well. Byun is definitely giving himself a lead with that opener. Command center lead, worker lead. His army's looking a little bit lackluster, but when it comes to TvT, 5 supply doesn't mean so much. Tanks can cover that, or just good control of units, good concaves. They both are grabbing a couple of Ravens, a couple of tanks. Byun has already added on another barracks to replace what could have been this one lost. This one actually didn't die, though. So he should have a 3rd barracks on the way soon, too. It's usually 1, 3, 5 when it comes to the Terran barracks production. Oh, and then he swaps that to the wait, no, I just yeah, okay. You know what? I think we both had the same initial idea, honestly, and we both went, oh wait. It looked like he was gonna trade the barracks for the reactor barracks, and then the reactor barracks is gonna go on top of the tech lab. It's like add-on hopscotch, but it makes more sense just let that barracks go on the tech lab, especially since it's a healthier barracks. So if the barracks dies and it's researching something, the research will fail. 3rd barracks is on the way. Plenty of room for a reactor. 3rd CC already pumping away in the SCVs. As Time finally finishes his 3rd orbital. Finally cleans up the tech lab that's out in the middle of nowhere. He doesn't want to take it? Oh, how surprising. Imagine taking... It's like a 20-minute, 25-minute TvT, and he's like, you know what? I will take that. That's my 3rd factory tech lab. That'd be sick. Couple of Vikings being produced for Time as he's exchanged his reactor onto the starport. Byun did the other option, which is to add on reactors and then put his barracks on them. So he's going to have a lot more Marines eventually, but his air control is going to be lacking. And currently, right now, their armies are very tech-based, right? It's not a whole lot of units. So that does bode well for Time. Is going to get a lift up on this third CC. The double Cyclone lock-on is actually the only thing that's really making this scary. I think Byun knows he won't lose it. Like, he really shouldn't. But yeah, the lock-ons are quite something. Ooh, speaking of lock-ons, ooh, good interference, maybe some Time. And then he hits his own lock-on on top of Byun's Ravens. Both of them trying to micro out of the way, though. Everyone does save all of their units. Time's Vikings are not quite here. Not in time to... Oh, no! That one Raven again not actually getting the auto turrets down. But here comes the Concave coming in from multiple directions. The Cyclones on the high ground. Byun's stim is also done, so he uses it to try and actually jump on top of these tanks. It will just barely be enough as he loses one of his tanks. They both trade out the Ravens. Time does lose more than his opponent. Actually takes down one more tank on the tail end of the fight. But Time loses more than his opponent. 10 SCVs went down for Byun, but yet again, that perfect number of SCVs pulled to sacrifice and be fine in the economy, it then makes sure 100% to clear up the army. Byun's apparently pretty good at that. So Byun is at 53 workers compared to 55. He's got his third CC back down location. He's got faster combat shields, and Time is down 17 army supply. That is recoverable, but you gotta be well positioned, and that was his problem last game. Not only is Time later to his combat shields, he's also later to his 1-1. Byun looking for the throat, scans and sees a very meager army around the third base, and pretty much just assumes that's it. Goes right into the natural, and Time doesn't have very much to defend that at all. A tank sieges up on top of that high ground, but that means his natural is no longer going to be mining. In fact, he has to lift it and repair before he loses it. Time down 30 supply. We look to be in such good position last game. Might just be losing this third game here. The mass repair barely able to take it down, and Time's good micro to try and snipe that one medevac works out in his favor to bridge the gap a little bit in that supply. But Byun is still centered in the natural base, still denying such precious mining. Time really struggling to make something happen here. A good scan from Byun is going to take out the tanks. They're going to trade on tanks, actually. Time lands his Vikings to take down what is a very few number of units, mostly mechanical left over. And Time is going to hold for now. But, ooh, that was a lot of lost mining time. Almost losing his orbital command, too. That would have really just been it. But he does hold. Gives himself another shot to defend against Byun's relentless attacks. Byun already sending his units across the map. He wants to capitalize. He knows Time is struggling to get a good tank count. He knows Time still doesn't have combat shields. And he wants to take advantage. Time's going to send one Marine out. It's going to give him the bad news. But Byun not really going to. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, the tanks. The Vikings. Oh my god. The Vikings gave the vision, almost lost it though. He's going to be forced to land them. The combat shield's really kicking in here. It's revenge for that first game, man. The Time's tank still alive is blasting away. I think he's going to barely hold as Byun gets a little overeager right there. That was close, man. That was, what I was faltering over was the fact that it looked like Time even acts... Oh, you know what? I can't even talk about it. There's already a drop in the main base. Hold on to that thought. A drop in the main, something that Time was not anticipating, now means he's going to lose his production. He's going to lose mining on his third command center. He's going to have to work against his own SimCity. The starport goes down. He repositions the tank in a really nice fashion, but unfortunately it looks like it might go down. He stims and actually spreads his Marines quite nicely. Going to take out the tanks, take out the medevacs, and then take out the Marines afterwards. But Time supply, ooh, that was a nice pickoff. Not letting that medevac out. Time supply still does not look good. Before things happen again, I want to quickly explain why it faltered. So it looked like the Vikings accidentally saw the tank of Byun, which gave Time's tank the vision to kill it. But then Time almost brought back his Vikings to lose the vision, and I thought that was going to kill Time. That's why I was like, oh, quit. Because I was like, oh shit. But Time was able to keep that tank and keep his dreams alive. And now cleaning up the main base, also continuing to keep his hopes alive. Not sure why he's replacing... Oh, wow. Oh, I see what he's going to do. Okay. All right. That is it's a risk. It is an absolute risk. It's pretty much like trying to add on a bunch of Stargates for carriers as a Protoss player. Time is going to try and skip filling out his supply and try to go right into Viking Liberator, but I'm not sure Byun's gonna let him do it. Byun has a 50 armor supply. He's taking out the tanks. Times Marines. We're not protecting them properly. Byun is going to make it into TSL6 after almost dying in the last game. He's got 4 command centers. His 4th is already a planetary. His 3-3 is already on the way. He has so much momentum, and Time is desperate. He's taking risks, huge risks, to try and bring himself back in this game. But not aggressive risks. Nothing that's actually giving him any momentum. Byun has a playground right now, and he's having so much fun. He's swinging on the swings. He's on the seesaw. He's on the monkey bars. He's just gonna micro his way out of this with all the fun that he can muster. He's a guy that really likes to play Starcraft because he actually has fun playing Starcraft, believe it or not. And Time just can't do anything about it. Time is the poor wimpy kid in the playground that the school bully doesn't let play in it. You know, like, Byun's being a bully right now. And Time is desperately trying to add on technology. Actually, he's gonna go into Mass Raven. So really, like, going into carriers as a Protoss player. Very tech heavy. I respect the risk-taking from Time, but it's not going to be good enough. Tank's already sieged up on his command center. Might just kill it. He's going to have to lift. He's going to have to try and break. Time down 30 supply. Does not have enough units, it looks like. Byun has done it. GG. Byun with the 2-1. Made us sweat. Made us sweat profusely. But Byun is in TSL6.